I want you to imagine something. Imagine walking into a room full of people who love you. Balloons. Music. Cake. Laughter. Everyone yelling surprise. And you're smiling, genuinely smiling, because for one beautiful second, you think this is the best moment of your life. And then you hear it. One sentence. Coming from the mouth of the one person you trusted more than anyone on this earth. And that smile? It doesn't just fade. It shatters. My name is Deanna. And the night of my surprise birthday party was the night I discovered that my best friend of 7 years had been selling my secrets, every single one of them, to the boy I was in love with. Not once. Not twice. 4 months. I'm going to tell you everything. Because this story doesn't end with me crying in a bathroom. This story ends with me walking out of that party with my head high. And it ends with both of them losing everything they thought they had. Stay with me. Her name was Mackenzie. Mackenzie Hale. We met in 7th grade, first day of middle school, standing in the same lunch line arguing over whether the pizza was actually edible. She said yes. I said absolutely not. We both took the pizza anyway. And we sat together and talked for the entire lunch period, and by the time the bell rang we had already made plans for the weekend. That was the beginning. 7 years of beginning. By the time we were 19, Mackenzie knew everything about me. And I mean everything. She knew that I still slept with the stuffed rabbit my grandmother gave me before she passed away. She knew that I had failed my driving test twice and told everyone I passed on the first try. She knew that I wrote poetry, bad, embarrassing, deeply sincere poetry, in a notebook I kept under my mattress. She knew that I had kissed a boy named Derek at summer camp when I was 15 and then cried about it for a week because I felt guilty for reasons I couldn't even explain. She knew about my anxiety, the real kind, not the kind people post about for attention, but the kind that made me cancel plans and sit in my car outside restaurants for 10 minutes before I could make myself go in. She knew about my family, my parents' marriage that was held together by habit more than love, my younger brother who struggled in school, the money stress that lived permanently underneath our household like a low hum nobody talked about. She knew about my dreams, that I wanted to move to Chicago, study communications, build something that was mine. I gave her all of it. Every single piece. Because that's what best friends are for, right? You give them the parts of yourself you can't show the world. You hand them your vulnerabilities like precious things and trust them to hold them carefully. I trusted Mackenzie with all of mine. And she handed them to someone else. His name was Ryan Calloway. I noticed him in October of our freshman year of college. We went to the same university, a medium-sized school in Nashville, close enough to home that we could go back on weekends but far enough that it felt like freedom. Ryan was in my Communications 101 class. He sat 3 rows ahead of me and slightly to the left, which meant I spent a significant portion of that semester looking at the back of his head and pretending to take notes. He had green eyes. I know that sounds like the beginning of a bad romance novel. But I'm telling you, when Ryan Calloway looked at you, it felt like being seen. He was funny in the way that smart people are funny, quietly, with perfect timing. He laughed at things other people missed. He held doors open without making it a performance. He remembered things people told him, small details, names of siblings, the coffee order you mentioned once in passing. I was completely, embarrassingly gone for him. I told Mackenzie, of course. She was my best friend. She was the first person I told everything. I described him in probably unnecessary detail over a video call one Sunday night in November. The green eyes, the way he laughed, the time he lent me a pen in class and my entire nervous system malfunctioned. Mackenzie listened. She laughed in the right places. She said, "Deanna, you need to just talk to him." I said, "I literally cannot form sentences near him." She said, "Then I'll help you." I thought she meant she'd coach me. Give me tips. Be my hype woman. That is not what she meant. I started talking to Ryan in January. It happened naturally, or what I thought was naturally. He showed up at the same coffee shop I always went to on Tuesday mornings. He recognized me from class. We talked for 20 minutes. He was even better in person than from 3 rows behind him. After that, he started sitting near me in class. We'd walk out together sometimes. Exchange notes. Text about assignments that gradually became texts about other things. I was floating. I told Mackenzie every single development. Every text. Every conversation. Every small moment. She always had the perfect response. Oh, that means he's interested. That thing he said about the weekend, he was definitely hinting. Deanna, he likes you. She seemed almost too knowledgeable about him. I thought she was just good at reading people. I was wrong. Here's what I didn't know. While I was telling Mackenzie everything about Ryan, Mackenzie was telling Ryan everything about me. Not general things. Everything. My anxiety, she told him I had panic attacks and what triggered them. My poetry notebook, she told him I wrote poems and that some of them were about him. My family's money stress, she told him we were struggling, that I worked 2 jobs to cover my tuition gap. My insecurities, she told him I hated my laugh, that I practiced conversations in the mirror before situations I was nervous about, that I had spent a week agonizing over a single text to him before sending it. My past, she told him about Derek at summer camp, about the boy before that who had said something cruel to me freshman year of high school that I had never fully gotten over. She handed him a complete map of every soft place inside me. And Ryan used it. Not cruelly. Not obviously. Skillfully. He said the right things at the right moments. Referenced things that made me feel like he just understood me intuitively. Made me feel seen in ways that I thought were magical. It wasn't magic. It was a manual. That my best friend wrote for him. I found out later, much later, at the party, that it had started as something almost accidental. Ryan and Mackenzie had a class together that I didn't know about. They'd become friendly. He'd mentioned knowing me from communications. She'd mentioned I liked him. And then Ryan, curious, or calculating, or maybe both, had started asking questions. And Mackenzie had started answering them. Why? I've asked myself that question 1,000 times. The most honest answer I've come up with is this: Mackenzie wanted to be needed. By both of us. She wanted to be the person pulling the strings. The one who knew everything, controlled everything, mattered to everyone. She wasn't doing it to hurt me. She was doing it because she couldn't stop herself. But the impact was the same. My 20th birthday was in March. I knew Mackenzie was planning something. She was terrible at keeping surprise secrets, always had been, and I had picked up on enough hints to know a party was coming. I pretended not to know. She had worked hard. I didn't want to take that from her. The party was at our friend Jess's apartment, a group of about 20 people, close friends from school and a few from home. There were balloons and a playlist and one of those grocery store cakes with the flowers made of frosting that somehow taste better than any fancy bakery cake. Ryan was there. Of course Ryan was there. Mackenzie had invited him. She'd told me casually 2 days before, "Oh, I mentioned it to Ryan, hope that's okay?" And I had said yes before my brain had fully processed what she was asking. I walked in and everyone yelled surprise and I did my best genuine shocked face even though I wasn't shocked, and for the first hour everything was wonderful. I talked to people I hadn't seen in months. I ate 2 slices of the grocery store cake. I danced badly in the kitchen with Jess. Ryan found me around 9 o'clock. He had a cup of whatever someone had mixed and he leaned against the wall next to me and said, "Happy birthday, Deanna." And the way he said my name still did something to me. We talked. Easy, warm, comfortable in the way we had become comfortable over months of building something I thought was real. And then he said something. Something small. Casual. Almost throwaway. He said, I feel like I can tell you're the kind of person who rehearses things before you say them. Like you care a lot about getting things right. I went very still. Not because it was wrong. Because it was exactly right. And I had never told him that. I had told Mackenzie that. In a late-night conversation 6 months ago, embarrassed and vulnerable, describing how I practiced what I was going to say to professors before office hours. How I scripted phone calls. How I rehearsed. I had told Mackenzie. Not Ryan. I looked at him. He didn't notice the shift in my face. He just kept talking, warm and easy. And something cold settled into my chest. I excused myself. Found a quiet hallway. Stood there for a moment, thinking. Rehearsing, actually, because that is what I do, running back through every conversation Ryan and I had ever had and looking at them with new eyes. The time he'd said something about my anxiety so naturally I thought I must have mentioned it to him, but couldn't remember when. The time he'd referenced my little brother by name even though I had only ever called him my brother in front of Ryan. The time he'd said, I feel like you're someone who's dealt with some hard stuff and come out tough on the other side, which I had taken as intuition but which was, I now understood, information. Someone had told him. I knew who. I found Mackenzie in the kitchen. She was laughing at something, holding a cup, completely relaxed in the way of someone who has no idea the world is about to shift. I pulled her into the hallway. I kept my voice completely calm. I said, how does Ryan know I rehearse conversations? Her face changed. Just for a second, a flicker, a rearrangement, before the smile came back. What do you mean? He just said it. Casually. Like he knew. And I have never told him that. But I told you. Deanna, I'm sure he just. Mackenzie. One word. Her name. Quiet as I have ever said anything. She looked at me. And I watched her decide, in real time, in a hallway at my birthday party, whether to lie or tell the truth. She told the truth. Not all at once. Not cleanly. It came out in pieces, each one worse than the last. She'd talked to him. Just casually at first. He'd asked about me. She'd mentioned things, just to help, she said, just because she wanted things to work out for us, she said, just because. How much? I said. She stopped. How much did you tell him? The silence told me everything. I want to tell you what I did not do. I did not cry in that hallway. I did not scream. I did not make a scene at my own birthday party surrounded by 20 people. I am not that kind of person. I am the kind of person who rehearses. So I stood in that hallway and I felt everything, the betrayal, the humiliation, the grief of losing something I hadn't even fully had, and I let it move through me like a wave. And then I made a plan. I went back into the party. I found Ryan. He was talking to someone across the room and he smiled when he saw me, that easy, warm smile that I now understood was partly performance. I walked up to him. I said, hey, can I ask you something? He said, of course. I said, what's my little brother's name? He blinked. What? My brother. What's his name? A pause. Too long. You mentioned it once, I think it was. I never told you his name, Ryan. His jaw shifted slightly. But Mackenzie did. Didn't she? It was not a question. The smile didn't disappear exactly. It just recalibrated. Deanna, I can explain. You don't have to, I said. And I meant it. I didn't need his explanation. I already had all the information I needed. I leaned slightly closer and I said, very quietly, so only he could hear. Everything you know about me, you didn't earn. You were handed it. And anything built on something handed to you isn't real. I stepped back. I smiled, genuinely, because I meant what I had said. And I walked away. I found Jess in the kitchen. Jess, who had thrown this party. Jess, who did not know any of this. Jess, who was one of the actually good ones. I said, "Thank you for this. Genuinely. It's the nicest thing anyone's done for me." She looked at my face and immediately knew something had happened. "Are you okay?" "I will be," I said. "I'm going to head out soon. But I want you to know, this party was perfect." She hugged me. I hugged her back. And then I got my coat. And I walked out of my own birthday party. With my head completely high. People always want the revenge to be dramatic. A big confrontation. Public humiliation. A moment where everyone sees the villain fall. Mine wasn't like that. Mine was quieter. And maybe more effective for it. With Mackenzie, I simply stopped. No fight. No final speech. No block on everything moment. I just withdrew. Didn't respond to texts with more than a word or two. Made myself unavailable. Let distance grow into silence the way it naturally does when one person stops tending to something. She tried, at first. Long messages. Explanations. A voice memo that was 11 minutes long that I listened to once and then deleted. I was only trying to help. I thought it would bring you two together. You don't understand how much I care about you. I understood exactly how much she cared about me. That was the problem. With Ryan, I was polite. Still sat near him in class because I refused to rearrange my life around my embarrassment. Still nodded in the hallway. Still existed in the same spaces with the same dignity I had always had. But I gave him nothing. No warmth. No access. No softness. And I watched him realize, slowly, visibly, that the map Mackenzie had given him was useless now. Because I had changed the terrain. Every vulnerability she had told him about, I worked on. My anxiety? I started seeing a counselor at the University Health Center. Actual help, not just management. My poetry? I submitted 3 pieces to the campus literary magazine. 2 were accepted. My dreams about Chicago? I researched programs. I applied. Every soft place she had exposed, I turned into something stronger. Not because of her. But because she had accidentally shown me exactly where I needed to grow. Here is what happened to Mackenzie. Not because I engineered it. Because truth has its own gravity. Our friend group was small and close. And in small close friend groups, secrets move. I didn't tell anyone what Mackenzie had done. I didn't have to. Mackenzie told people herself, in the way the guilty people do, talking around things, explaining without being asked, defending herself in conversations where she hadn't been accused. People noticed. Jess, sharp, observant Jess, put pieces together and came to me quietly one afternoon in April. I told her the truth. Not dramatically. Just factually. Jess told 2 other people. Those 2 people told their version. And by May, Mackenzie had lost 4 friendships that had nothing to do with me. I didn't do that to her. Her own actions did that to her. I was simply no longer in the way of the consequences. Ryan left our communications class before the semester ended, transferred to a different section. I don't know why exactly. Maybe he was embarrassed. Maybe he had tried the same thing with someone else and it had gone differently. Maybe he just needed a clean start. I genuinely wished him one. Not warmly. But genuinely. In September, I moved to Chicago. I got into the communications program I had been dreaming about. I packed everything I owned into a car that barely held it all and I drove north on a Tuesday morning with my coffee and a playlist and the particular feeling of a person who has decided to stop shrinking. I found an apartment with 2 other students, Mia, who was studying journalism, and a quiet guy named Patrick who made elaborate breakfasts on Sunday mornings and didn't talk much the rest of the week, which was a perfect arrangement. I found a therapist I actually clicked with on the third try. I found a writing group that met on Thursday evenings above a bookstore, where I read my poetry out loud for the first time in my life and nobody laughed, and one woman said, "That one stayed with me, and I thought about it for 3 days." I found, slowly and with more intention than I had ever applied to anything, the shape of a life that was entirely mine. Built on nothing borrowed. Nothing handed. Nothing extracted without my knowledge. I think about Mackenzie sometimes. Less now than I used to. When I do, I feel something that took me a long time to identify. It isn't anger anymore. It isn't even sadness exactly. It's something like pity, the kind that doesn't look down but just recognizes. Mackenzie was someone who needed to be at the center of everything. Needed to be needed. Needed to matter to every person in every room. And she never figured out that the way to matter to people is not to control them. It's to simply show up, honestly, as yourself. She never learned that. I hope she does someday. But that's her work to do. Not mine. I want to tell you something about secrets. Not the keeping of them, the giving of them. When you tell someone your secrets, you're not just sharing information. You're extending trust. You're saying, I believe you will hold this carefully. I believe you will honor what I've given you. That's a sacred thing. And when someone violates it, when they take what you gave in trust and hand it to someone else without your knowledge, they don't just break your trust. They break something in themselves. Because you can't truly connect with anyone using information you stole. Ryan never actually knew me. He knew a file Mackenzie had assembled. And files don't laugh. Files don't surprise you. Files don't grow and change and become something you didn't expect. People do. He missed out on knowing an actual person because he chose the shortcut. That's his loss. And Mackenzie missed out on being trusted by someone who had trusted her completely. That's a different kind of loss. The kind that compounds. My name is Deanna. I am 22 years old and I live in Chicago, and I am in the second year of a communications program that I love. I have friends who know my secrets and keep them. I have a therapist who helps me turn my anxiety into something manageable. I have a poetry notebook, a new one, not under a mattress but on a shelf, that I don't hide anymore. I have a life that nobody handed me. That nobody mapped out for someone else. That is entirely, completely, beautifully mine. And on my 22nd birthday, celebrated at a small restaurant with 6 people who have never once given me a reason to doubt them, I thought about that surprise party. The balloons. The music. The cake. The hallway. The silence that told me everything. And I was grateful. Not for what happened, but for what it taught me. The people worth trusting are the ones who protect your vulnerabilities instead of cataloging them. Find those people. Hold on to them. And let the rest go. Thank you for watching. If this story felt familiar, if you've ever trusted someone who wasn't careful with what you gave them, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more real stories. And remember, your secrets are precious. Give them only to people who know that.